Okay, this is the Affordable Housing Committee meeting of Wednesday, September 11th at 7 o'clock. Meeting in Old Town Hall as well as via Zoom. I'll turn things over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, welcome everyone. We have a pretty loaded agenda tonight, but let's start as usual with the minutes of the last meeting. So the minutes of the August meeting.
July.
July.
We skip
August. July meeting. No wonder. The minutes of the July meeting. So
I move to approve.
is there a second?
I have a comment though too.
Oh, no.
Why don't you go with your comments?
Second and then comment.
Yeah, seconded.
Okay, you get seconds.
Yeah. Right, in the first paragraph about the Chris Russo proposal, I'd like it to say, and I thought I'd mentioned this during the meeting, that the type of unit, which is the last three words, should include potentially rental units, that it shouldn't be just for sale units.
There might be additional flexibility in terms of geographic proximity and the type of unit to include rental. Is that what you're saying?
I would say type of unit including rental.
Including. No problem. Is that okay?
Sure, I thought of it.
Any
This is a kind of a
Was there another one?
compressed version of the minute. So anyone who wants to actually get a minute blow by blow can go to look at the videotape.
That's what we do. Any comments or suggestions beyond what's on the table? Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? No, great. Very good. Item number one completed.
We're off to a good start.
Okay. Now let's go into the affordable housing plan. And so we have three areas that we wanted to specifically address. And I guess we're discussing these also within the context of the POCD. And the POCD latest version is as Mark mentioned, is on the town website. There will be a public hearing in October. And
I think
okay.
it hasn't been scheduled yet.
Yeah, it hasn't been scheduled. So I checked with one of the commissioners today, and he said that they still didn't have a date. So I
It'll
thought
be
maybe
the first or third Tuesday, the off Tuesdays during the month of October.
it'll be one of the off Tuesdays?
Yeah.
Okay, so that means it would be, hey, Brian, it means it would be the first or the 15th, then I think. First or the 15th of October. So the first isn't too far away. Where was the 15th? Yes.
Although it wouldn't shock me if it got pushed into November. So I know they were looking to try to schedule something in October, and those were the two dates that were being suggested.
These days.
Yeah, they got
That's
a
the
lot-
issue. They have a lot on their plate right now.
And I wouldn't at all be surprised if it were more than one public hearing, based upon, the volume of material that's in that draft. And also the different levels of feedback and different sources of feedback we're likely to get. So I think we're sensitive to that.
To be clear, and for Brian's benefit, you're talking about planning and zoning meeting on the POCD?
Yeah, so planning and zoning meeting on the POCD and
Hearing.
a public hearing
Yeah.
on the POCD. And now that this draft, which may be the semi-final draft or near final draft, is out. So we'll have to see. But-
Staff is planning to present this latest version of the POCD to the Board of Selectmen at their second meeting in September. It's informational, but if the Board of Selectmen were to object to any provision within it, then it requires, I believe, a supermajority vote of the commission to overrule the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, and then this is what date this is being presented?
That would be,
At their next regular meeting?
it's not the next one, because the next
No,
one's
October 8th?
I think it would be the 25th, I believe, of September.
Oh, okay.
So that gives further indication that we're in the home stretch. This is usually preceding the required public hearing, which they're planning for October. The date yet to be determined. So as soon as I hear anything, I'll let the committee know, and I can.
So that presentation, the Board of Selectmen, that'll be on Zoom?
I believe, yeah, they're all
They're all-
simulcast.
And do you expect it to be a very summary or brief presentation, or they're gonna get into some of the meat?
I would guess it's gonna be a summary overview, given the Board of Selectmen's agenda these days.
Mhm.
I would guess it's probably gonna be limited to 15 minutes with time for questions. You know, so I don't think it's gonna go in that much in depth, but I'm not presenting it. I believe Jim Went, the town planner, is gonna be presenting to the Board of Selectmen. He's done this before at the outset, and I don't know that there was any significant pushback, questions, issues that came up as a result of that. So it is required, I believe, to do that outreach prior to the public hearing. So they're doing it.
So we've got three items that directly affect the POCD decisions. And they are the inclusionary zoning, the parking, and middle housing issues. So our plan was, when I say our plan, Mark and I talked about the possibility of having some discussion on these items, at least having some discussion on these items tonight, and maybe trying to reach some sort of a near consensus. And then I guess voting at our next meeting.
Yeah, it might be a little difficult because we don't have actually a proposal before us. So I would ask for your indulgence and maybe defer that conversation till our next meeting. I think for purposes of POCD, the POCD draft does include reference to all three. The need to make reforms in all these areas, or at least investigate, explore further, particularly as it relates to middle housing. There's a recommendation to conduct a study, I believe. So for purposes of the POCD, I think we're covered, if you will. It I think provides sufficient latitude for the commission to subsequently enact regulatory changes, such, as we might propose at some point in the future.
Yeah, I do think though, with respect to inclusionary zoning, where they have very specific aspirations there. And I'm basing this on comments that Emily's made, that we should, if we have any concerns or thoughts to the contrary, it's probably good for us to be ready earlier rather than later on that one in particular.
I think, well, I'm going from memory, but I'll defer to the expert over here who's read it very thoroughly. I think it does provide, it's general language to, for example, increase the inclusionary set-aside provision to something greater than what it is currently or more. So it's language that's pretty general. It does provide go from 10% to 15% or more.
Yeah.
But I think in some of those instances, unless we think that that's a bridge too far, I don't know that it precludes what we're considering at this point.
My recollection is, Bob, this is at 12% in the TOD area. We should do that, basically, it says. And then I think it said up to 15%.
In all other residential. I guess the two areas that are not touched upon that we may want to bring, and we've had discussion about this, is lowering from 10 to 5, minimum number. That's not addressed to the POCD, and also raising the fee from $5 per thousand to something else.
That is true.
That's not, and neither of those are in the current draft of the POCD. So we've had discussions about both of those.
I thought the fire.
There's probably a sentiment to do something on each of those areas, so that would be additional input from us to them, I guess, at the appropriate point.
That would be worthwhile.
Yeah.
So don't think we need to make a final decision at this meeting by any means, but I think it's probably good for us to have one.
Would you envision a summary statement coming from the committee that you would author, or individual committee members testifying
I think
about their opinions, not on behalf of the committee per se? We do both,
could do both. I think it probably depends upon if there is a consensus among committee members as to what we'd like to propose. I mean, if that's a struggle, or if we're find ourselves 3-2 or 4-3 or whatever, maybe it's just better for
I think
us
the
to
committee ought
this
to
individual.
vote on it.
Weigh in, I think, they go on record,
And then
right?
individually, if you want to make some comments, you can, but I think we should go on the record.
I think we should, and they've incorporated so much, 80% of it, the affordable housing plan is in the current draft of the P O C D stuff. Tremendous.
Yeah, there's a lot in
In that
there.
first chapter. Yeah, it
There's a lot in there.
really is. There's just a couple of things, that's not.
Mark,
I'll leave it to you. I mean, I do think that we had
5, 10, that's a
I
big.
think we had consensus around the trigger, going from 10 to something lower. I think we had some open questions about what the set aside percentage should be and whether we should target different income classes. I think that the PUC should allow for those types of considerations. So it might be just suggesting some minor language changes that would provide the commission greater flexibility to enact regulatory change such as being recommended by the committee at some point.
absolutely. I think that's.
And same with the inclusionary zone.
Exactly, I mean, their operative word is consider, they start every recommendation with consider, so we can offer several additional considerations.
The fact that, for example, with the fee, the fact that it wouldn't be in the P O C D, I don't think would preclude the Planning and Zoning Commission from at some point in the future revisiting the fee that they already enacted and making appropriate adjustments. So just because it's not in the
Right,
P
of
O C D
course.
doesn't mean they can't do it.
No, absolutely. Mark, at one of the sessions that, prep sessions I think you and I had, you would put together a nice list of affordable housing ideas. I brought that with me.
Good, I'm glad you did.
So I just have like as a potential as a potential checklist. In fact, this is the one that we and I had. Talked about. So let me just get one to Jackie, Steve, Brian, and Gretchen. So just so this might be something we could just take a look at and just make sure that we have.
And I wouldn't want them to include that level of specificity. It seems like it's unnecessary to box them in.
Exactly.
I just think, what we want to make sure is the PUC doesn't preclude them from doing something like that because it's inconsistent with the plan of conservation. I don't see anything that would be inconsistent.
Well, the second bullet is in the plan. The first and third line, they do address payment in lieu of, considering other payment in lieu of. Minimum parking is in the plan, going to spaces for, that's in there.
Bob, so this, we mentioned here multi-family dwellings, did they go beyond that
No.
in the latest version?
No.
Okay. This, what they address is basically what we have here.
Yeah.
I may have heard some squeaking about the payment in lieu. Answer some questions.
Well, they haven't been convinced it's a payment in lieu, partly because the poster child that's been put forth with it hasn't been the best example case. But I think there's probably an argument to be had. We just may need to spend a little bit more time on that.
Yeah, I just gave my personal opinion that we should have both.
I mean, it's similar. I don't think they were really initially enamored with the idea of, nor were we, for all, with creating off-site units in lieu of creating them on-site. But I think there's an argument to be had that could be advantageous to the town, depending on how it's structured.
Yeah.
So, and, if it's, I think the argument I'd advance with the Planning and Zoning Commission, it puts another tool in your toolkit. I mean, you have the discretion to deploy it.
That's essentially,
Why not have those options?
that's essentially how I answered it.
They're like, we don't trust ourselves, so don't give us these tools because we won't actually use it. And we don't trust ourselves to use it judiciously.
After I said it was common to see both, I didn't get any more questions.
I suppose that's why we have elections too,
Right.
people don't use things judiciously.
The last bullet's not.
the next to last is.
Yeah.
And the one before that is.
Bourdain is not, all they say is they go from 5 spaces per.
1 to 4.
We would maybe recommend a little more.
Well, we probably, it possibly might come together and have a public hearing on the first. In which case we might be scrambling a little bit to create a consensus statement from the committee, but it's probably more likely it might be later in the month, but I guess we'll see. We can always have a special meeting, even by Zoom. To debate these a little bit further, you know, rather than, I don't want to cut off discussion tonight if you want to delve into it.
No, I think that's certainly something we can do.
I can't even remember writing this, so.
I think this is a good start. I think there are other things we can recommend tweaking relative to ADUs. All they say in the plan is consider expanding opportunities for detached ADUs in smaller lot zones, but I think Commissioner Randolph had some good input a couple months ago, and submitted, and I think not all of that found its way in. I think it's worth our discussing, relative to ADUs, that we can talk about. I think another area that we could address is town-owned properties. There are 318 town-owned properties, and I've done a deep analysis of them, and I'll have some recommendations, some thoughts for the next committee meeting, getting close. And I think there are several that are redeployable, redevelopable to for housing opportunities. So that's something that I think ought to find it, ought to be referenced or mentioned in the document. I think everything else is pretty much covered. Then you've got the minimum lot size. That last forward is good. That's not. That's not.
So which ones are the ones that are in there already?
Second one's in there.
Okay.
Yeah. 4 and 5 are in there. And the last one is not in there. I don't think the last two bullets are in there.
The next to last bullet is there.
It is there in the
And they
DRD.
mentioned
They have a
both of
full discussion of DRD there.
these. They mentioned both of these, so
Yeah.
Mark's says, you know, one or, and I think they've got both for consideration, so seems like they've got that covered. Yeah, but that would leave,
So it's 2, 4, 5, and 7.
2, 4, 5, and 7.
Should number these
are
things.
in
Right,
there.
right. 2, 4, 5, 7.
Are
Yeah,
in
they're
there.
already covered or touched on. The others, 1, 3, 6, 8. Could find their way in there.
Mark, have you had any success with lowering the targeted household income? You were negotiating with the guy down on Black Rock.
We still are. I mean, we're essentially, the whole point of that exercise is to hold him be revenue neutral to him. So essentially paying for the additional units in the form of a tax abatement that would offset the revenue loss associated with that. So to my way of thinking, I understand there's maybe some other operational issues that give him pause. Just how the marketplace responds to something with greater affordability. But I mean, the whole point of that was to try to make it as palatable, you know, to offset that revenue loss. And we're still talking about it. So I think it's definitely viable.
Well, so the equity part of it aside, the other idea is that we get more points if it's a lower income bracket, right?
Right. Yeah. Right, which is why we're, you know, the benefit for that, the trade-off is that we would double the number of points associated with that project, and also obviously double the number of affordable units and provide deeper affordability, going from 80% to 60% with 10% of those. So that, you know, that's a public benefit. I think that's something that would be worthwhile considering making that investment. The easiest way for us to invest perhaps is not for us to make a direct appropriation, but just to take a little bit less in the tax revenues coming out. So that's the thought.
More saleable, more readily saleable.
Well, we'll see. So far, we don't have a deal with the developer, nor have we presented it to any town board to see if they'll.
Just figures it might be a little bit more palatable to them.
Yeah, I don't think it would be likely that we would pony up the money. You know, it works out to about $500,000 per year. If you're considering a 40-year restriction, which we need in order to get points for the moratorium, that's $20 million. So, you know, it adds up pretty quick. It's not small change, you know.
So if you were able to work something out with him, could you also then maybe go back to developers who developed a housing project 5 years ago?
I think it's definitely plausible. Yeah, I think, you know, the point that I've made to this developer and would make to others is that it's kind of a limited window. It has more utility and benefit to the town right now. I mean, it always has benefit to us to create more affordable, more housing options, right? More affordable housing options for folks. But in terms of moratorium points, you know, we obviously will have enough points for the first one with the project on Park Avenue. We're working very diligently on our second one. And once we get to the requisite number of points with projects in the pipeline, then maybe our motivation is not as strong. So, you know, I think there's a time limit on some of these
Yeah,
things.
and also, I mean, the times we are currently living in, we're living in a period of dire
Need.
lack of affordability,
Right.
dire need.
Right.
And it could be that the housing market looks
Yeah.
different 5 years from now.
Right.
You know, maybe less of a stress, less difficult for people, but who knows, right?
Who knows?
Okay, well, the state for the meeting, they won't meet again until September 24th. Will they wait until the 24th to make a decision on that date, do you think?
I will follow up with the town planner and assistant town planner to see if there's been any change, but I don't believe that, I think they'll have to formally schedule it. There may be some conversations as to polling to see who's available.
Good.
But I think they'll have to formally schedule it, so I would expect that at a meeting.
And that means the first is pretty unlikely at this stage. That was their initial target, was October 1st.
Yeah,
But that looks pretty unlikely at this stage, I think.
I'd say the odds are against it at this point, yeah.
So we could be looking at the 15th or the 29th.
Yeah, once you get into November and then you run into scheduling issues with holidays and other things. So I'm sure that they would like to get this buttoned up before the end of the year as much as they can.
Sure. Well, then should we certainly can hold out the option of doing a Zoom meeting if we feel that it's necessary to make some decisions before a hearing. But
Yeah, this level, I would, you know, it's up to you guys if you want to have more time to consider it. I certainly would understand. What I meant was I wasn't prepared to provide a recommendation as to, well, on the inclusionary zoning, a specific regulation amendment. And so we're just talking about to make sure that the PUCD is reflective of these goals. I leave it to your discretion.
so what's everybody think? I mean, should we have any more conversation on these items now to the extent we can? Should we plan to try to finalize our thinking on them at our next meeting, whenever that is?
I would just say, does anybody have any questions on these? Because I don't, I get all these, so if we understand them, I mean, if there's something in here that's gray or somebody's got a serious bone of contention with them.
That seems good to me.
Perhaps it would be wise to like beat that out now, so that when you get on the phone.
Yeah.
I mean, but for me, I was fine with all these.
I think we've talked a lot about these
I do too.
Yeah.
for several meetings. And that's how we came up with these points.
And I will just say that I will just say that number
I
one,
just don't understand.
not making it in there was, I thought that was one of the ones where I was most expected to.
Yeah, the only thing I would say, and I'm all in favor of number one, I just would say that it might require, at least in some of these cases, for us to pony up some financing support to make. it
Yeah,
viable.
maybe, or developers will just act accordingly, or oppose certain projects because they're no longer
They'll
as
propose
viable.
4 instead of 5,
Right,
yeah.
is that such a bad thing? I
Or
mean,
4 instead of 6.
No, or they'll actually do,
I would
they'll-
rather have it be less than more,
Okay.
to be honest.
Cause they're gonna keep, I mean, it's too big a window right now.
And the other question, I guess, is in number 3 is.
we've had too many 9-lot and
Yeah.
9-unit
Yeah,
apartments.
like a lot.
So,
Yeah,
it's gotta be addressed, absolutely.
It's insane.
It's definitely a poke in the eye.
Another question, is 5 to 6 enough?
No.
Well, I think,
Well,
you know,
I think it'll discourage some of that, but I also don't want to discourage people from building ever, period.
Yeah.
But I do think that, like, building all these 9s and just congesting and just being obnoxious.
I think that for purposes of P O C D, you probably don't, and I don't know that the Planning and Zoning Commission would want to have that level of specificity, like increase a fee from
5 to 6.
$1, you
So
know,
maybe just
it would be like consider increasing the inclusionary zoning fee, that's what it is.
So if we phrased it as such, again, going to 5 minimum and then increasing the fee from $5 per thousand.
Oh.
Is everybody comfortable with those?
Mhm.
So then now we've got consensus on the 4. As you suggested, Brian.
No, so I just think that, yeah, if we wanna have a fun, whatever, we need to have a quick special meeting or something just to make sure everybody, no one's changed their mind in the past.
If everyone's good with it, you know, we can easily turn this around, so.
Yeah, we can turn this around and then-
Continue through. I have a comment on number 1, a question really for you, Mark. If we load at 5, that development on Mill Plain and Stilson, I forget how many acres that was, no, but how many acres, you know. And so if they felt handcuffed by it being lowered to 5, could they split the lot in such a way that they could build 4 units and then do an 830G on the remaining property?
Well, I think, you know, these are very general concepts and they would have to be written in appropriate legal language to prevent that. I think there was an interpretation, even with the 9-lot, 10-lot subdivision that they considered, that there was an interpretation to be had that it suggested that the prior split was really part of the same subdivision, right? The commission decided not to take that position. We could certainly ask that they clarify that to prevent that kind of
Okay.
monkey business.
So it sounds like we have consensus on these 8 items, and as far as the inclusionary zoning percentage, I mean, I guess we could just say increase the percentage beyond the existing 10%.
Yeah, I think it says that right now, doesn't it? It says 10% or higher, you know,
10%, okay, it's already there.
or 10% to 12% and higher, I think it says that.
So maybe this is our,
The only other, what's not here on this bullet point that Bob just raised
There are a few
is
things
language
that
on ADUs and town-owned
Yeah.
properties. And I had a conversation with, well, there's a payment in lieu option here. It doesn't talk about off-site, which is something they might be considering. But the 2 that you raised specifically were ADUs and town-owned properties. And I know there's some commission members that are thinking about, you know, whether some town assets are underutilized, underleveraged, so.
and there are others that will.
And I said, well, you know, you're the town planning and zoning commission, so if that's something you wanna consider, that's a good place to start, put it in the master plan that this is something we should look at. And so to your point, I think maybe that's all they need is somebody else to suggest it as well.
Yeah.
And it's not just the planning and zoning, if they got to that point, it would have to be a larger stakeholder group to consider, if this is considered access to the town's requirements, we wanna consider other options, what are those options? That's a whole planning process, so involve a lot of different folks around the table.
So how would we phrase that number 10? Not the one on the ADUs, but the one on town-owned properties,
I would
just
say
study the
Study the
potential.
potential redevelopment of select town properties for additional missing middle housing.
Or other.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, that's good.
So that's, I've got a few other things like that. But,
That's good.
I think it would also be interesting, because there's two places where they're proposing to consider rezoning in certain sections of town, from A to B and from B to C. And I'd like to get more definition maybe from Emmeline. I mean, they've got a map here with no street names or anything. How many
Yeah,
properties are we
yeah.
talking about?
Yeah, you had mentioned that before. What are the exact
Can we
dimensions?
define that better? Because those could be pretty big. And the other one is obviously expanding the CDBD zone out past Sasko Hill, on Route 1, almost doubling the
Which
CDBD.
zone, I'm sorry?
CDBD.
Center Design Business.
Past Sasko, westward on Route 1.
Yeah.
That's a biggie. For mixed use development.
Maybe it won't be as important now.
And then going east to Detroit, I think, extending it further east too. But it would be good to get some more definition from the staff on how many units are we talking about potentially when we do rezone? Because when you go from B to C, you can have
It was very,
triplexes and fourplexes.
I mean, my early take of those in terms of the ADB and B2C, it was a very limited number of
Small,
properties.
yeah.
Very limited number of properties. I mean,
Yeah, which shouldn't make them nervous about adopting that, I mean, it's not huge.
maybe 100 at most.
So that sounds like a lot.
I don't, it maybe not.
Under.
Well, but some of them are already,
And some of them are
It's a little smaller than that.
it's probably, but
Even more than that.
I mean, you're talking about a lot of properties that are on the New England,
Yes.
it gets a relatively tight area.
One more.
There are not many properties in that ADB area. Let me see if I can find that,
But there must be a merit to doing this, otherwise why do it? Why rezone? There's no accrued benefit, why would you do it?
well, I think the point was that these are more like
They're more like
B
B than
than
A.
C. Yeah,
So
more like B
Name
than
it
A.
properly,
Yeah,
gotcha.
so
Not that it'll
it's,
free up, not that it'll free up,
it's found money,
Yeah.
basically.
gotcha.
And now, do we want to reinforce our interest in the middle housing study? I mean, I know we're interested.
It is included.
It's included.
It's there,
I think-
but some of these things are included as well, but I'm just, do we want to go
Go
around
ahead,
it
take a study.
saying it's important to do it?
What kind of study is this?
Missing middle housing types. Explore high rich one zone, base zone, as a way of introducing more middle housing. So it's happy.
For all, townwide, I mean, or individually across all zones.
So I think,
Does it explore the language or explore the effect or
it's to conduct a study,
the effect?
To identify missing middle housing types.
opportunities.
Bob's doing that, isn't he?
Is it feasible,
He already did it for them.
is it feasible to do more?
They're paid.
Put a proposal in, Bob.
I'm wondering how much that's already been done by DCPC Connecticut, because, they did a big push on the missing middle. And I don't know if there's,
What's that?
part of their study would be appropriate for Fairfield, they segregate Connecticut and their sister organization 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they did a lot.
Did that map, that
They
mapping
did.
that they did of all towns?
Yeah, but I don't think that was at the level that we'd actually could implement. That was looking at potential opportunities and I think it was more like, these communities don't have, as of right, 2 to 4 family zoning. or have limited options with regard to 2, 3, and 4 family units. So, and, that's helpful, but we already have as of right 2, 3, and 4 family zoning here. What we're trying to do is do more of it. And how do we do that? So, and that is one of the things we brought up with the Fairfield County Center for Housing Opportunity Technical Assistance Grant, to ask them to help us identify best practices to do exactly that. Whether it's looking at cluster housing in Westport or Bethel or something like that, those are all things that we might want to think about. It sounds like there's some other things that we might want to incorporate into our final statement. I don't want to take away if there's consensus on this. We can certainly take a motion to approve this, and then we can come back later and add to the list if you want. I do think we did send them a letter. I thought we sent the Planning and Zoning Commission a letter.
Prior version, yeah.
Which included some other things as well. Maybe it was a recitation of some of the stuff that didn't make its way into the draft, so. But.
So why don't we, anything you can do with the language when these, Mark, and we're happy to be working.
Yeah, I can certainly tweak the language if this is the consensus of the group. I can write it in a less,
More generalized.
more generalized fashion.
Yeah, and then we can think of it as sort of a space holder for ADUs.
Yeah.
I can even come up with something like that.
I mean, yeah, it's fine, yeah.
So, Mark, could you embed this in a letter, what we would sign, and send it out in draft form, and we do a Zoom and finish it up?
Yeah, we can do it that way. Yeah, that would be fine. I mean,
Or just, even.
well, we probably should take a vote or get some kind of sense of the body before we do that, but that'll be. And then we can. Polish it up with a letter.
Yeah, so we'll just try to stay ahead of the
Okay,
Planning and Zoning Commission, right?
so it will come back one more time.
One more time.
Again.
I tried.
I know.
I'll be sure to ask you.
I was hoping right
You
now.
know, at the next meeting, we'll be sure to ask you.
The horse.
It's fine, you know.
But we,
I voiced my opinion pretty loudly.
if I understood, the sense of the body here is that everything on this sheet is good,
Yeah,
right?
no,
And then we just need to tweak it a little bit and include some other language on this, on the town-owned properties and ADU.
Yeah, is that the sense of the body? Okay, I think
I'm sensitive.
we've beaten
that horse.
So we've really covered.
It is definitely.
Yeah, we touched on those.
We've covered all these 3 bullets.
Thank you for refreshing my memory.
You just don't remember all the good things that you've done. You know, there's so many of them.
Time flies.
Mark, when we talked to Jim and Emmeline, and you talked about these things, are you able to quantify the effect of these 8? You know, that if we lower it to 5 unit subdivisions, we'll pick up 2 or 3 that we missed over the last 3 years or something like that. If we increase the
We have some of that in our plan. We have that in our plan, the affordable housing plan has that, X number.
Yeah, I think
will accrue,
I
so-
think when we get to the point where we're actually proposing regulation amendment, we need to be prepared to discuss
Sure.
what the impact of those changes will be.
Yeah.
When you're talking about just changing the overall plan, master plan, it's a very general description, like you said, consider this.
Yeah, so, yeah.
I don't think we have to get to
Yeah,
that level.
when we get to the zoning reg discussion,
Yeah,
we'll be ready.
we're gonna,
Yes, then we'll have.
we're gonna need to have
Yeah,
some
we'll-
information, right?
Okay.
And you're right, we'd probably do a look back. And that would maybe give us a sense as to what we might see in the future in terms of activity levels, certainly for, developments of between 5 and 10. I can think of 4. Off the top of my head.
Great. So we move on to old business then?
Yeah, so the one, there is a proposed set-aside development that will be coming up for a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission. It is, you can view information online, is a proposed 24-unit development at 222 Stilson Road.
Okay. It came to them for concept review.
Correct. It is a not only a 3-story building, it's 2 stories of residential above on a podium.
There's
So there's
condominiums that are just east of Black Rock Terminal.
23 parking spaces under.
No, I know, Chris pointed out to me.
Additional.
For that other development, by the ball field on the curve,
On site.
for the ball field.
There are proposed 2 studios, 16 1-bedroom and 6 2-bedroom units.
I think they scaled that back a little bit from what they presented for the concept review.
Maybe.
24 units doesn't sound like, I think they went.
There was
higher.
another, there was another one on, that was a concept review elsewhere on Stilson, I believe. So this is
That's the
this is across the street next to the
Oh,
condominium.
Okay, that's the one just below Bill.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a different, that's a different one.
Okay, this is the.
Then that's not being proposed as a set-aside development, that's being proposed as a text amendment to revert back to the old
Right, to
condo
the-
regs.
Yeah. The
We used to
DRD.
have a DRD that allowed for density that allowed many of the condominium
Yeah.
developments here in town to be developed, so they're proposing to revert back to the density that was allowable, 20 years ago.
This
This
is the one.
This
next
is
to the
different.
condo.
This is different, this
On
is
the other side of the Black Rock Car Park,
Closer to.
closer to Trader Joe's.
Closer to.
correct,
Yeah,
correct.
right there.
And it's right next to the in fact, it was part of that
Next to, yeah.
part of that condominium development in terms of a lot that was never developed.
Yeah.
So it is again, proposed 24 unit, 2 stories of residential above a parking deck, so a podium. 2 studios, 16 1-bedrooms, 6 2-bedrooms. I did look at the affordability plan. It's generally consistent with the language, state guidelines and our model language, which is not surprising. The property owners, which are Paul and Mary Vimini, some of you may know them. They're listed as the administrator of the plan. We've previously had comments relative to somebody without a lot of experience administering affordable housing developments, and, we're not sure of their qualifications or credentials to do so. There's some very minor technical issues. They didn't include a specific dispersal plan that I could see, so we'd want to see that. So my intent was to provide general comments on the affordability plan. They never came before this commission asking you to take a look at it. I'm just bringing it to your attention. I didn't see anything really weird about their affordability plan that, so, whether it gets approved is, again, the standard is there's compelling public health and safety issues based on evidence in the record that outweigh the need for affordable housing. So it's a fairly high bar that has to be met. And I haven't looked at your other, things that might rise, things that you have looked at in terms of traffic circulation, sight lines, things of that nature. So
So this is proximate to the Oaks.
it is, it's right next door.
Right next to the Oaks.
And there are some water issues.
There's a pond in the back, or wetlands in the back, so they have to go through wetlands. I think they probably already have done that because, typically they dispense with that before getting to planning and zoning. So this will likely be on the planning and zoning commission agenda within the next, either, depending on what's before them, maybe the end of this month or October. It's gonna be, I think it's October. It's gonna be before 2179 Post Road, the Mark Andres project that he had presented. So that's it for the only other, obviously the set aside development that we're closely monitoring is 5545 Park Avenue, which is, we're getting close to CO. We're still vulnerable to any applications filed
Right.
prior to the states approving our moratorium application, so that could be some time yet.
Question on the house on Stilson, was that on any of the blighted housing lists?
It was.
It was,
Was?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
And the pond is half the property.
yeah, they were able to, shoehorn it in beyond, around it.
Yeah, having knocked on doors in the Oaks.
How big is the
Familiar
property?
with the property.
Can you tell? How big is the property?
I think it's like
Knocked
3
on
quarters
doors
of
in there, so I know
So it's big enough.
exactly where that
to avoid
house,
it.
that pond is, but yeah, there's plenty of room for that.
Yeah, I just think there's a,
It's probably avoid it.
Yeah, well, obviously they have to.
there's an office building in the Trader Joe's shopping center that is 2 stories. Yeah, so already it's 3, so they won't necessarily stand out as much as
No,
a South Front.
Chilson Plaza is right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
That's right.
an 830G, but it's not outrageously.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah.
That's like, you know.
And then.
Let's see, Housing Trust Fund, that's from my little list here. So the trust fund, as of August 31st, has a balance of almost, it's $893,576. So we're building it back up. There is, so there is an opportunity to acquire a property next to 244 Greenfield Street in that same area.
Oh, right, that's on our
We've had
list. That's on our list too.
We had conversations with the property owner. And we have tentatively reached an agreement in terms of price. We have not begun the process yet of securing the necessary approvals for that. We'll do that probably in
You need to
October.
grab some town-owned land too behind it.
We already have permission to use
Oh, you do, yeah,
that from the
right,
Parks
to
and
go
Parks
into
and
it.
Rec.
That's great.
But
Perfect.
good news, my understanding is that the town, based on prior statements from this body to the RTM, would be amenable to using remaining ARPA dollars for the
Oh, nice.
acquisition of the property. And that is subject to their allocation and approval of that. But if they were to do that, then
That's nice.
we don't have to use the
You
housing
don't
trust
have to
fund
write
for that purpose.
That's 254, right?
Yeah, we're kind of keeping that off the radar at the moment, but
Is that property as big as the other one?
No,
it's smaller.
Smaller, yeah.
you need to add behind it, you need to go into.
Yeah, what we've looked at it, and it could be developed for 3 units.
Yeah.
So probably a 2-family and a single family. It's a weird lot.
It is a weird lot.
The house is really close to the street.
It is.
Yeah.
So, we're working with the property owner. We don't have a signed agreement or anything like that, so but we're
That's good.
hopefully, at least orally, we're on the same page.
You said a 2-family and a single family?
That would be the
Like-
preliminary plan, yeah. So that covers A.
No, I'm sorry, that's not 6 duplexes now, you're talking, that's not 6 individual units now, you're talking about 3.
I'm talking about a single duplex, 2
One,
units,
yeah,
and
yeah.
1 single
Okay.
family home, so 3 units.
Cool.
It's, again, I think our challenge here is to look at a sustainable path forward. This works because we would be funding the purchase of the property, and Habitat would be building it at a loss based on their fundraising. But we're paying on a per unit basis a pretty high amount for the land. And, resources are limited, so we might want to see if we can figure out a way that we can do more, maybe through some kind of cluster type housing development of some sort.
That's
So,
interesting, yeah.
But for now, the model works. Obviously Habitat's, they're about 70% built on Greenfield Street, moving right along. Parkview, we met with their council and their title insurer to discuss Parkview's a little different. There's a couple of standalone two-family building lots that, you know, they can come in with a pull a building permit and build a two-family there. You know, it needs to be elevated. But then the other side of the property, we're putting 3 lots together and then proposing to build a combination of 2s and 3s. And so, you know, part of it is the structure. So even if with duplex, you typically have some kind of common wall agreement or common interest community. So that's what we're wrestling with, how to do this, not to be a condo per se, but something condo light, like common interest community. So a little easier than the condominium development, which I definitely do not want to pursue. So we're still working those issues out, and as a result, we haven't gone to the boards for their approval of a ground lease, because we want to make sure we understand what the structure is going to be, because that will be connected with that. So I've covered A, B, C, and D.
Can we go back down a second?
Yeah.
On the set asides. So there were 2 court opinions that went against us?
Yes.
Yeah. Masons, right?
Yeah, that was a while back, but yeah, and they,
Overall?
and Umpqua. Umpqua was more recent.
Was there another one?
Umpqua had 2 separate decisions. One was the overturning of the Water Pollution Control Authority's denial or conditional approval. I don't recall, but it was
But it was the same development?
same development.
Okay. And that's the one that's gonna be not on the corner, it's a little bit in and it goes through to,
Yeah, essentially it covers where Las Vegas Lounge is up through the Donnelly Walk. So as proposed, as you know, the court has approved, or they've remanded certain provisions back to the authority. Part of it is, it's a weird decision because it's talking about remanding certain things back. They have to demonstrate, like through additional testing, that the drainage can handle, which was a key consideration. If you know that area, it floods regularly. They're proposing below grade parking, you know, which could turn into an aquarium. We think, you know, based on some of the water that we've seen there in years past. I've been there with water up to my knees, so it's an issue. So that was something that was considered back, but you know, the displacement of the commercial tenant, because it's 100% residential under 830G. Now, there had been conversations in the past, and even a prior application, it was more of a mixed use development. You know, maybe there's an opportunity to revisit that. I believe the commission has authorized an appeal of the decision. It's not guaranteed the appellate court would accept that. And, you know, clearly the odds would be stacked against us further to win on the merits, I would think, based on the lower court's decision, but you know, we'll see.
So, but the town has had, or the,
I believe, my understanding is that the Planning and Zoning Commission authorized an appeal. And, you know, maybe that will give a narrow window of opportunity for somebody to come up with something that might work for both sides. You know, from economic development perspective, I hate to see, you know, businesses displaced, and I would hate to see 100% residential in the downtown core.
especially
On
there.
a
we don't wanna set a precedent.
It's just gonna look awful. I mean, it's just gonna be awful.
And it's a 7-story building. It's not great.
How tall?
6 to 7 stories.
Wow. Is that the biggest in town?
Yes.
It would be.
Yeah, I mean, it would be equivalent to like, I mean, I think Alto is maybe 6 stories over by Commerce Drive, but it would be, you know, there it's matched by like Bigelow T is 70 feet tall. Here, it would stand out. It would stand out.
There goes my barber.
And your barber, yeah, the barber's in it. So, you know, I think.
Makes it like so quaint and cute.
I think I've been suggesting that, you know, I think there's a way to do this that can provide the owner a reasonable return and still come up with a good project. It's not that housing is a bad thing in that location. It's actually, it would be good to have some additional housing. It's a question of how much and what does it look like? I mean, I think there's some options to improve the aesthetics of the project. So, but, you know, we'll see.
It'd be nice to get some good architectural design.
Exactly.
You know.
Well, there is
There is
a, yeah, we have a design standard within the Center Design Business District. The unfortunate thing is when you do an 830G, it goes out the window.
Right.
Yeah. It's the black building.
What was the other one? Oh, Beach, have you seen they've demoed? I don't think that, you know, it's a 40-unit development there. I'm not sure that that's gonna, you know, stand out that much. It's in
It'll be set
it's
back
a
a bit,
transition
probably.
from the commercial to the residential, and you're going up the hill, so it's certainly gonna be bigger than what was there, for sure.
And that's our favorite developer, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Carol Martin's court case is almost coming to.
One would hope.
Yeah, she's asked us to
Okay.
be prepared to go, so she's thinking it's any day now. I don't know if she's being optimistic, but
Well, I don't know. We'll see.
High Street.
It's just, it's the wetlands decision, so we'll see what happens there.
Now, at the Bronson Road, I haven't been up there to look, but is there anything, any real activity on Bronson?
Yeah,
Road?
they're building.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you put these together, that's what I'm saying, if you put
Yeah.
the stuff that's actually under construction or about to start construction,
Be a lot.
you've got the makings of moratorium number 2.
Yeah.
So if we were to push a couple projects to increase the point value, you could easily get to
Yeah.
that, so that it's like you have a 10-year period
Right.
essentially that's.
Are you able to submit for number one, get it approved, and then immediately submit for number two? Or do you have to wait until the full year?
Tack it on.
Yeah, no, there's no.
I don't know the answer to that question precisely, but I don't think you'd have to wait for the one to expire before you apply the second one.
Good.
That's certainly the plan.
what's the second moratorium percentage, 6%?
No, it actually goes down,
Oh, it does?
yeah.
Chris,
So you don't have to go from 2 to 1.5% of the housing stock, and then I think it's good for an additional year, I believe.
Yeah, 5 years instead of 4 years.
I think so.
Nice to be in charge.
Of course.
Yeah, so I think that's the point.
I mean, but we need the units.
We do need the units,
We
but I think
people need
you have
access.
then you have the ability to decide how and where those units get built. It's
Yeah.
really, you know, to answer the critics, it's about, you know, having control over your destiny.
Sure. Absolutely.
It, you know, a moratorium does not preclude every proposed assisted housing development. It doesn't preclude assisted. So, for example, there's a carve out for projects where the majority of units are affordable, or there are 40 units or less proposed like by the housing authority. So a project like at High Street, for example, 40 units would not be covered under a moratorium. She could file that application. So there are exceptions, but it would preclude some of the other, you know, the stuff that most people get worked up about, right? So.
Absolutely. Okay. One of your favorite subjects is coming up here.
Which one's that?
St. Emery's.
Well, Carol did complete an appraisal. She provided a copy of it to the diocese, and I'm sure it's not meeting their expectation of what they would like for the property, but we talked today and we're hopeful that we'll engage them in some serious conversations about the future of that property.
Okay, that's good news.
And I left obviously we've covered the POCD, the proposed density bonus text amendment. This body did in June approve writing in support of that proposed density bonus. The where you get one unit if you create one more unit type thing. It's on Royal Avenue. That is probably gonna be coming up for a public hearing towards the end of this month, hopefully. The only thing that's not in their language is, it says 40 years. It does not say for the life of development, but not less than 40 years. I'm asking only if you would like me to make that request formally as part of the record, the letter that I will write for Herb to submit to the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's a little unclear. There was conversation about asking, but I didn't know if that was part of the motion or not, so.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean,
Why not?
it is not to.
I have no harm in asking for my
Right,
standpoint, so I'm just bringing it up, so.
So we would ask for
I think I
40 years of
proposed,
life, whatever.
I think I had proposed language similar to what's in the current regs.
Life but not.
The area, which is for the life of the development, but not less than 40 years. So you have to have the 40 years in order for the state to consider it. So I will put that letter together.
Do we need to vote on that?
If that's the intent of the body from before, that's just a clarification of your previous motion, so I'm okay with that.
Go for it.
Yep, all right.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, then the technical assistance, did you want to say anything about that?
We're supposed to be meeting with them next week, right? And they asked us to narrow down we had a very robust initial conversation where we threw a lot of things on the table. Herb and I, and then there was Jim and Emily, and I think Christine Brown appeared for a while, and I think David Becker was there for a little bit, and Bill Gerber, the first selectman, was there for a little bit. So it was a all-encompassing conversation. So they were like, well, can you boil it down to like one thing or two things you want us to work on? And what we asked for initially was help us with this middle housing conundrum. So I think that's where we were at, right?
That's what we.
That's what we need to help with,
focus,
right?
yeah. So we don't necessarily have great aspirations.
I don't either.
What's going to come from this?
I don't, no, I don't. But, if they identify something, even if they say, hey, look at this community, they figured it out.
And since this was all your idea in the first place.
Yeah, it's my fault.
I mean, Mark's idea was incorporated in the grant, and we've applied, and we were selected as one of 5 communities, so we have to walk the talk, right? So, anyway. Okay, so then we've got a section addressing outreach plans. So we wanted to talk about the workshop, and we wanted to talk about the aging in place fair that's taking place on September 26th at the Bigelow Center. And then I just wanted to resurrect briefly a discussion we had about a year or so ago about wider outreach that we might want to do, as a committee in the community, how we might want to go about that. So maybe we'll start with the ADU workshop that's coming up soon.
Well, we did check a few dates with the museum. Museum seems to worked out very well as our venue of choice. So the 17th is available. I have a soft hold on it from basically 6 to 9. Our workshop typically is from 7 to 8:30 with some time for setup and Q&A and cleanup afterwards.
Did you say Monday the 16th?
So 17th of October should be Thursday.
October.
Thursday, yeah, October.
Yeah, we won't do that quickly.
Yesterday.
Sorry, October 17th, yeah. Which is, it is coming around because we would need to identify a few more panelists. And then typically we like to,
Moderator.
we have a moderator or an assistant moderator, I guess.
I will return to the moderator.
You
Bob will
return to
return.
moderator.
Bob's a year
hiatus.
You did a good job, all right.
Bob took off last year, and we had to put
I
in
know,
a,
because last.
we had to put in a
Cheddar.
sub, we had to put in a sub, but now we've got the real thing.
All right, cool.
So the date is good. We have the venue. We can kind of roll out the marketing, which we like to do about 30 days prior. We can compress that a little bit. But we do need to figure out the panelists. So I think Jim and Emmeline, one of them are available. Obviously, we have the moderator. In years past, we've had a realtor, we've had an architect or a builder, and we usually have a homeowner that can talk about their personal experience with it. So,
So you need an architect? Yeah.
Well, we're either architect or builder. So we had an architect in year one. We had.
we would have loved to have a builder last year, but the builder ended up getting sick.
Covered, but she did an excellent job.
So Daryl Dickinson, he does small homes, small buildings. He also is in the Connecticut Post.
I like to. Question is, has he done anything in town?
In Fairfield?
Yeah.
I don't believe so. He's done stuff east, west, Greenwich.
ADUs?
I don't know. I mean, I can.
We have a conversation with him.
Okay.
I mean, part of it is, these are, from an architect's perspective, these are the design considerations. This is the estimated cost of construction. This is, those are the types of things things you have to think
I
about.
mean, if we can get, like we did last year, if we get a homeowner, they can have their building. So I mean, it's almost
A twofer?
a twofer. So Emmeline and Jim, we've asked them to look over next year if anybody comes to mind. We would like to have Denise Walsh again, though. Did you secure her last year?
Steve did, and so if you could ask.
Yeah,
Want her again?
yeah, she was really good last year. I
Okay.
mean, I know her, but if you want to do the outreach, that'd be great.
She did a great job.
She knows the drill.
I think a contractor would be really good too. I can't think of any, but if.
We had Mark Andre years ago.
Mark was the architect. Last year, we were gonna have a builder.
Who did not,
So it's either an architect or a designer or a contractor, builder type person.
No, I don't think the fellow from last year had any experience working in town, did he?
I don't know.
It was someone that Emmeline through her
Oh, okay.
statewide, I think.
Emmeline knew him.
Yeah, but I mean, the Emmeline covers,
I know.
like, covers a wide swath.
Well, let me talk to Emmeline about the homeowner. I think the homeowner, and that could
That could
identify
lead to a building.
a builder or an architect, and if that doesn't work, and we can suggest dual and.
Yeah, and I can ask around to see if somebody knows,
That'd be great.
but it's got a contractor who's worked in town, right?
Ideally.
Preferably, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
I
Or
think,
it'd be in the works. I mean, like Phyllis's was in the works last year.
I think, again, the questions are more generic, like,
Yeah.
these are the types of things you have to think about if you're building it, and this is how much it might cost you, and the process type questions. So I think probably they won't be able to address things specific to Fairfield in terms of the process, but that's why we have Jim or Emmeline there, so.
I think Phyllis really enjoyed doing that last year, and she was really enthused. I think at first there were some questions, because it was Bob's idea.
Are you gonna bring her back? Is that what you're saying?
Well,
They got their CO in January.
I think we should,
It's a wonderful space.
I think we should at least,
Yeah, really.
I think it'd be good if you or I, you know them better, were to reach out and invite them, because I think it would be constructive. Not necessarily to be the panelists, maybe, but at least to come and just,
Okay.
how did it work out? And do you have any other words of wisdom now that you've gone through it? I
Well,
mean,
why not? Why not ask him back?
Yeah, I can certainly do that.
I think it's a good idea, and give them 5 minutes or something to.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
that's a great suggestion.
she really did, she really, well, she
There we
did
go.
a great job.
Unless Emmeline has a better suggestion, why not go back to?
Why not? It could be an update, to revisit, because last time it was still in process.
Process.
She had a ways to go last time.
So,
Yeah, I'm sure she probably has some experiences to relate.
And Emmeline might have other people to suggest that we reach out to that just maybe come and be ready to share their experiences in the audience.
yeah,
Too, so we can.
that's true.
see what you say.
Right.
Well, I think also, we talked about this, we haven't really done anything in the past, but we're doing this once a year and we video it.
Mhm.
How many people are gonna go look at the video afterwards? I'm
I
not.
don't have to find out.
But I think it would be good if we tried,
Right?
if we try to find ways to remind everybody that this is going on. So this age-friendly Fairfield project that we're working on, might be one way we could do this, and we had talked about, maybe the Bigelow Center could be a repository for this kind of information, but we ought to think about what can we do between,
Might need to snazz your production.
We could edit down the video and take out snippets, the important sound bites.
so we could look for ways to remind people. Okay, good. Then we've got the resource fair.
Resource fair, that is in September, the 26th of September at the Bigelow Center from 5 to 7. We have a table, I guess. I'm not sure if it's.
Pamphlets of the.
Yeah, we have
Right?
pamphlets, yeah.
Yeah.
So we have, it could be like Affordable Housing Committee, CDBG, our programs, figure it out. So.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe there's a way to speak, I mean, this will be set up at table.
26th of September.
To Thursday.
Yeah, I think it'll be in the cafeteria, but I'm not sure it's the cafeteria, the gym,
For the gym?
I think it may have been in the gym.
It was in the
last time.
gym prior years.
So, maybe a good time to bring your major contribution along with us, because I think
Yeah, sure.
they want to highlight Fairfield Senior Advocates, they want to highlight, age-friendly Fairfield, and certainly want to highlight
Well, you guys are famous.
Mark's work and Affordable Housing Committee.
Ah.
I have one.
So there will be, which one is that?
I have this flyer. I keep it, so it reminds me I have to be somewhere on the 26th of September. Can you pass it around?
Very cool.
That one today?
I don't know.
Oh, I haven't even seen that. Okay, nice, great. Let's get some copies of that, but anyway, I mean, they invited a lot of different people that would support the aging in place community, from remodelers to developers to,
But there are no presentations.
Not that I'm
Meaning-
aware.
I don't know, Bob, I don't think they completely contemplated, but I think we could probably find a way. I think we can find a way. I'll see what I can do. I'm an insider down there now, so. Without going to the programs I should be attending. Because we've done a lot of work in supporting them. I'm sometimes in a position of asking for a favor too, so. But anyway, I'll try to find out what the game plan is down there.
Cool.
So.
We should find a Peter as a committee.
I think it'd be great if any of us can be there. Jackie, you plan to be
I'm
there.
glad I'll be there, yeah.
I think it'll be great if we can be there. I think it'll be interesting, be a chance to find out what else is going on among some of these other vendors.
Yeah.
And my biggest, not worry, but it was, let's promote this as much as we can. I think it'd be great if we can do an FSA.
You wanna do it last?
I think we should, and we're gonna talk about, we're getting approached by others in terms of doing plans for them, so we probably ought to. You and I are probably
Send
talking.
me I need content, I can send it west, so.
I need to call them about some other things too. So
It may have come in
call them
color.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
because there's a lot of
Jen and
color.
Tony and whatever else.
Okay, it could all be in one, that, they're coming up.
Like the background
So,
should have been like,
The one is a week.
No.
I mean, I can get something out Friday.
and then
So,
some of the
excellent.
words.
Probably.
I'll go
You
over
have
it.
additions to the database, you had,
I do, and I
like, get them into, it's much better.
I'll get them to you.
What about other communication with newspapers and stuff? We've been not successful over the last 20 years of getting much in the paper. Once in a while,
All
we
you
get a little something, but
all you have to do is write it, Steve.
This new reporter that the Post has seems to be pretty good, young guy, he seems to be quite good, and
We can get stuff in the paper. That's not a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
Problem is, somebody's gotta come up with the content. And that's, we're maxed out,
Yeah.
I've got 3 newsletters and all kinds of other things going on.
All kinds of committees,
Yeah.
committees should come.
So, yeah, I'm not writing op-ed pieces for the newspaper. They call me enough, but if we're press release, so we put out press releases too, but if there's something, somebody wants to take.
Steve, you have some thoughts, why don't you drop us a note?
Yeah, well, is there anything, anything on the ballot this year, are there any housing measures, nothing?
No, I think, who reads the paper anymore?
Exactly.
So I think, I do too, but it's a dying group here, so
That cohort.
I think we may wanna consider, your point is well
All of
taken.
those, like, all of the, neighborhood things, I mean, I don't subscribe to any of them, but that neighborhood blogs and things like that, like,
And
those
the
are things
patch,
that we should,
We
that-
gotta approach the patch.
Well, yeah, but unless somebody's died or there's no.
I'm not volunteering. I
I'm
would
not saying you're.
It largely
I'm
strikes me
just
as
saying, like,
sensationalism.
that's the other things that-
Yes.
That would be good places, Facebook groups, Fairfield,
Correct.
something or other.
It's
a lot
very
of groups for
hard to
Fairfield.
Occasionally I'm convinced to shoot a video.
No,
And I think like this.
It's an Instagram.
Yes.
So we could produce a series, we've talked to the museum, because the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence is coming up in 2026. So part of the thought process is, could you create little vignettes about Fairfield history that people would actually consume? Something would be like a minute and a half, 2 minutes, because everyone has a short attention span, so you have to keep things in short little snippets. You could do the same thing on housing issues. You could explain an issue on one targeted thing for 90 seconds to 2 minutes. You could put a series of these together, and you could create a library, and people can view them at their leisure. And you can drop them out occasionally through social media and then refer people back. I can't develop, I can star in these things, but somebody's gonna have to develop some content.
We have to write.
Yeah. Or we have to come up, or we have to hire somebody to help us with that. Well, I have some ideas on that too, so we could consider that.
Just think of all of us,
Carol would have some ideas too.
okay?
I
Think
do.
of all of us.
Yeah.
So if we could get
Questions and we get a Yeah, when you go to one of the.
But that was an idea that I had, because, again, people are more on these
Yeah.
than reading the paper.
Oh, yeah.
So if you put it on something like this, you might be able to reach some people.
Yeah.
but I think that needs to be done. I didn't mention it last night. Yeah, well, that's true.
We haven't done it always, because we've been involved as an list, it's 700 or something.
I was thinking minutes there last night.
We're not getting to do them, I do them, so.
If you have some good content, sure.
Against the high street thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Why don't you?
I'm sure we can get it out.
Have some cookies and coffee here.
Once you can,
I bet you they would be stunned.
I don't understand how it's going to sit on that
It
property.
should be quality content.
It's going to be something
once you commit to something,
from it and say,
you have to do it on a regular basis, otherwise, so it
Yeah,
has to have
that's the
some,
thing,
you have to be
Place the place.
yes, the house.
That's the hard
That's a
part.
community center.
We did a series of videos, senior advocacy.
Turns out to be.
It's cost a lot of money. I mean, that's on the
I was the
judges.
questioner, Mark was the star.
Brian Leclerc is a good friend of mine. I know all about it.
Yeah.
It was really good, I thought. But it was a different time and
People are home and I guess we're
people are
doing
even more-
Netflix stuff, so.
You had time, I did a lot of things during the pandemic that now I'm like, I don't have time to
We
do
couldn't
that.
get people to invest
No, I
40
know.
minutes in looking at these things now.
Exactly.
40 minutes.
So it has to be, like, what are the do people here have TikTok?
We.
Okay, so what are the TikTok
I
things,
will
like, how long do they have to be?
Oh, it's very
As
short.
long as they want now, I think. There's no other.
Times.
Cause I think like the attention span of most people is like a minute.
We try not to shoot anything longer than 90 seconds.
Yeah.
The Chinese one.
That's long.
Yeah, and that is.
Because if
long.
you do a 5-minute video, people are clicked off and have.
Oh, yeah,
So, you know, you have to be very compelling to get somebody to pay attention for 5
or,
minutes.
yeah, or longer than, yeah, so it has to be like something for a minute.
Yep.
Now, mind you, it'll be like a lot of different things that we can
It's just a
address
topic.
in
Yeah, we
different
had a
minutes.
series and.
But, yes.
Yeah.
Or shoot like a lot of content in one day or 2
Right,
weeks,
just
and then
edit
you
it.
can
Yeah.
space it out every
Exactly.
week. You send out like one of the nuggets that you did.
It's like a did you know type thing.
Yeah, game, like,
Yes.
kind of a game plan and then we'll. yeah,
Exactly, exactly.
We should be thinking about that. I want to say, Mark and I went to this panel today in New Haven that Emmeline
Organize.
organized and asked us to participate in. And one theme that came up a lot was people were making progress in terms of holding these community conversations. And instead of, I guess, the traditional way of, asking people to come and then just hitting them with a lot of facts and figures and
I don't think to
history and
buy them
background.
with dinner.
Yeah, with some dinner.
It's like, having people for dinner.
So, but they felt that the idea was to bring people who may have different points of view and to talk, there were talking sessions and get people to soften up a little bit and it was a way of sparking interest and one of the speakers indicated that they were really starting having a lot of progress with it. He also mentioned that he was having a lot of progress since he began wearing Hawaiian shirts instead of suits.
If you see me wearing one shirt, that was the one takeaway from today, so. It's
Yeah,
apparently
mine-
non-threatening,
No,
I'll just
that's
wear
a
a
bad
little-
idea.
I'm not suggesting over here. You have to find a new comedian.
Even though I did enjoy your T-shirt about music Fairfield and I did attend, so that was a
Make
good
music
one.
Fairfield, yeah.
Yes, yes, so it was my first year ever.
That was a hot day.
That was
Was
raining.
then it rained.
Yeah, rain.
But overall,
Yeah.
it was a good experience and it was because you were wearing that shirt, T-shirt. But, yeah,
You missed my other shirt, so you can all come to Fairfield Oktoberfest this Saturday from 2 to 6 at the FTC lot, free
This
admission,
Saturday,
this Saturday.
Oktoberfest this Saturday?
Yes, because Oktoberfest in Germany is celebrated in September.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not in October, it's over in October.
Steve, with your name.
Hangover last October.
As I should.
Yeah,
You have to buy your own beer and your own food, but there's free admission, free music.
Cool.
FTC lot, Saturday, 2 to 6, should be great weather. Somebody shot a video.
Do the food trucks with the.
Food trucks.
No, the library is gonna have its thing.
Yeah, library, hopefully that won't be a monsoon like the time before. I did want 2 other things real quick, did want to mention, some of you may know that we have pursued an enforcement action against a 4-family rental unit here in town. We took them to court. We alleged that they were overcharging their tenants for rent, and they weren't otherwise observing the Declaration of Covenants and Restrictions. This was an HDF, Housing Development Fund property that they assigned the enforcement rights to my office a few years back. And we pursued it. We did get a $77,559.77 settlement.
Oh, nice.
At closing, we are going to the Board of Selectmen tomorrow to propose a distribution of those funds. Most of which will go to the tenants who were impacted by that, were overcharged. But the way I must appreciate the fact that how HDF wrote the language, it provided for penalties of 50% on top of whatever impact, which totaled $23,000, which I'm proposing come to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Hawaiian shirts for everybody.
Hawaiian shirts for everybody.
Steve being very excited.
And unfortunately, part of those dollars will probably have to go pay
The attorney fees.
No, we already covered that, that's taken out, which wasn't bad. But, I got a sewer use bill, from, on 376 Quincy, which is the property that we foreclosed. Wasn't handled at closing, so we owe, $2,708.97.
So we use for one lot?
No, somebody didn't pay.
It's multiple years and includes principal and interest, includes interest and lien fees of almost $1,000. And so I will I will go to the Water Pollution Control Authority and beg for them to waive the interest and lien fees.
I'll talk to Joe.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'll see him at the gag. Joe, come on, man.
So I had success before in going to them and asking if they would waive the I&I charge for the Habitat project, because that was, I think, $15,000 for those duplexes. And, you know, every little bit counts. I mean, we were already underwater on that project to begin with, so they did agree to do that because the town had essentially waived the purchase price. So they said, well, that's the least we can do then. So that's it for my report.
Okay. Any other business?
Yes. Turner Army Reserve. Come on, it's time we got it.
I agree.
Put some housing there.
Yeah, well, we can't do housing.
You know, it's an election year, you can do anything during the
Well,
election.
you can't, because if you're taking it under no cost conveyance, you can't do housing. Because there's a covenant that goes with it, says you can't do that. You have to use it for this purpose.
We could do a land swap.
We could do a land swap, so if you use it for recreation purposes and you clear out, you know, the rec department from where it currently lives,
Right.
you have a development site, which could be used for housing or something else.
Or if you could move the entire Bigelow Center.
You could also do that, because I think that it would make sense to co-locate the senior center and recreation in the same building. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
And then you would take that out of the flood zone area, right?
Well, we have property to build in the flood zone, but we have to build it according to, we'd have to build it according to
Sure.
needs.
We're talking about the current Bigelow Center.
The current
Or
big-
Bigelow
Yeah,
Center.
but the town would be out of the Bigelow Center. That would be out of the flood zone,
That's,
so.
that would be in the flood zone.
Anyway, just some thoughts, different way to approach it, let's not to necessarily fight the restrictive covenants, but. That's it.
Okay,
Any other business?
I think that should be your op-ed piece.
yeah.
The first one.
What's happening with the Turner Reserve Center?
Yes. So then you could.
Your move to adjourn? I wanna know.
We can,
I wanna know.
we're not here advocates, we can certainly put one.
We can certainly.
Anytime you wanna write one, we're gonna put it in.
Yeah.
In the senior advocates.
Like, what?
Well, what do you think about that?
Rob's a communications
Yeah.
guru, he can make it happen.
You know, you could probably be one of those undercover sources and get the paper to do the work for you. You just have to whisper to the right reporter.
Just kind of your voice.
Hey, what's going on? I think there's a story.
I heard. It's taken a long time, and why can't we use it for whatever we want?
What's that mean?
Yeah.
Return.
We know. We know everybody who knows.
Whoever was tuned in left.
Conversation.
Code discussion. Move to adjourn.
Second.